Jess, I want to share with you 5 insider tips on how someone can find the perfect piece of land in Northern Virginia.
Okay, awesome.
Number 1, topography. Number 2, approach. Number 3, trees. Number 4, shape of the lot. And number 5, the sun orientation.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. Hi, welcome back to Glow Talks with Jess. I am thrilled today to bring you part 2 of our series with the beautiful Francisca Alonso of AV Architect and Build. We are excited about sharing some of our, adventures in my personal experience of building a custom home here in Great Falls, Virginia. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you, Jess. I am super excited to be on your show today, and thank you for having me.
I know, we're always having fun.
Yes, we are.
So what we wanted to talk today with you all about was finding the perfect piece of land for your custom home. And, there are a lot of factors that as a realtor we look for, right? Location, price, property size, proximity to school, work, and your life activities. But through our adventures, we found that there are some other aspects that maybe people aren't taking into consideration when looking for land.
Yes, and we call those the intangibles. So they're not the very obvious ones, but they are the ones that actually add more of the feeling of the property. And that's what we're going to be sharing with you guys today.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to building a home, finding a home, we as humans need to feel safe. We need to feel like it's a retreat, a space that we can go back to from our busy days and busy lives outside and really find rest and healing and ability to commune with our families and bring people together. So I find that, when looking for a place to live, it's important to think about the feeling of it and that holistic part of living, right?
Absolutely. And especially in an area like Great Falls in Northern Virginia, right? The lots are generally bigger. Mm-hmm. We're talking about 1 to 6 to 7 acres parcels.
Right.
So it's a lot of land, right? And there can be a variety of aspects of the land that will either add value to the way the house sits on it or not.
Right.
So these are the things that you want to look at, explore when you're looking for property in the Great Falls, Northern Virginia area.
Well, I found, just as we mentioned in our prior podcast episode, people don't necessarily think about a teardown property. And, also I think in Great Falls specifically, each property is so unique. So you can go from just a raw piece of land or look at a teardown property where there's an old house perhaps, but the land lot is amazing, right?
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting that you bring that up because most of the people that I talk to as a builder is they think that they need to be looking for land. Yeah. And they always say, well, there's no land in Northern Virginia. And that's an accurate statement. There is very little land available, but there are plenty of teardowns.
Right.
So a teardown is basically any home built before the 1980s that hasn't been kept up.
Right. Updated or...
Exactly. So that
renovated.
Home, and the interesting thing is that generally speaking, it's actually more cost efficient to build on a property that has a teardown than to build on a property that's never been built on.
And these other intangible factors that we're going to share with you guys today, you wouldn't necessarily even think when you're looking at a tear down property to assess these things, because perhaps that home and where it was situated on the land isn't going to be necessarily how your custom home is going to be situated on the land.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we had some properties that we saw that were, you know, a real like no up front, and we had
Right.
other properties that we really did thoroughly research and look at and visit, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes, like we discussed
Yeah.
prior,
Yeah.
something looks really good on paper, and then you go and see it and it's like, it's not going to work.
Right.
And perhaps maybe it's not going to work for the size home that you want to build, right? Or it's
Right.
not going to work for, you know, many different reasons. Opposite, right, could be something that doesn't look good on paper, but then when you actually go visit and walk the property and really look a little deeper, that it's like, this is actually something, you know?
Right, right. I think it's really important that you go visit the property
Yeah.
before you decide. I mean, if the tangible criteria, right, the zip code, the size, the community, the schools,
Yeah.
if
Location.
that checks off,
Yeah.
right, and you can obviously go through that very quickly, then the next thing is to go see the property.
Yep.
Because
Bring your boots.
yes, bring your boots and some bug spray, and go see it.
Yeah.
Because once you drive up there or you walk up there, the experience can change everything.
Yep. And talking about experience, the first pointer that we kind of wanted to assess on each of the properties that we looked at was the approach.
Right.
And this is something you don't really think about.
No, people don't usually think about that, and it's really about the approach, the journey. How do I, encounter the property every
Home,
day?
right.
Every day.
What's the experience as I drive up to my home, or as my guests drive up to my home?
Exactly. And I think that's a huge aspect of finding the right lot. It is not something that you can easily change.
Right.
And it's not, the obvious tangibles. So
Right.
it falls under the intangibles.
Right.
So when we were looking at properties, that was one of the things that we were looking at. You know, what does the experience feel like when you're driving up to the property?
Yeah.
Whether it's 2 acres or 5 acres, there is a journey to the house.
Yep.
To the future placement of the house.
Yes.
And what does that journey feel like? Is there value to the journey?
Yes.
Or is the house, the lot, is it just at the end of a cul-de-sac on a built-out community where you
Right.
just drive up to it and there's your house?
Well, there was one
Right?
piece of land that we saw, and it was in a cul-de-sac and in a community. However, all the homes were different because they used different builders. There wasn't necessarily an HOA that would restrict one or another builder.
Right.
So that to me was a little like, I don't know, it's either like I want to see it uniform, or I want to be kind of set off and not have my home now compared to my next door neighbor and then the neighbor here and the first person on the street.
Right.
So that to me was a little daunting, I think. The lots was a little smaller.
Right.
And it was the last lot available in that particular enclave or neighborhood that maybe it wasn't the best. Like there were homes right there next to it. So ultimately we didn't, take that property. There was another one that perhaps shared a pipe stem road. And
yes.
right. And you don't really
Yes.
know it until you drive there.
Right.
Until you go there.
Right. Right.
So pipe stems can also be somewhat, I guess it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But it's good to have one if you want to be set off from a neighborhood or have
Right.
more privacy
Right.
around your home.
Right.
May not be so good if you have to have this shared driveway, perhaps with neighbors along the way.
Right. Especially if it's a short one.
Right.
Then there can be always issues down the road. If it's a very long shared driveway, it can be more acceptable. But if it's very short, there's always issues down the road
Yeah,
with
exactly.
neighbors.
I mean, ultimately, the one property that we found that I thought was a great fit for us personally does have a portion of a shared driveway.
Yes.
But it also is allowing for an immense amount of privacy
Right.
for the lot.
That was the thing, that it was so much longer.
Yeah. And nobody's able to actually drive by and go to another home from
No.
that particular property because
Exactly.
mine is now at the end.
Exactly.
So nobody else should be driving back there unless you know you're coming to
Exactly.
Jess's house.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So I loved that about, the approach to that particular piece of land.
Yes. And that's something that you really cannot see from the paper.
That's right.
You have to drive up to the property and experience that and see if you see yourself in that area.
Yeah.
Approaching the house.
For us in particular, it worked out because we're a younger family. My kids are in their teenage years and, I'm still, sprightly. So
Yes.
it wasn't as much of a factor for me to have a longer drive or a longer approach to the home.
Right.
Where somebody who's elderly it may not work for them.
Right.
Or
Right.
someone who's, physically not as capable of taking care of the land or the property or that longer approach to the
Right.
home.
Right.
It may not be a good fit for them.
Right.
So there are a lot of factors that go into
Yes.
it. And, honestly, I didn't really, until we started really looking at these lots and the land and even the tear down properties, I didn't really take that into consideration.
Right. And most people don't.
Yeah.
And unless, they start, most of our clients, once they start working with us, we start pointing out these other intangibles, these other aspects of the lot that nature provides.
Right.
So it's really hard to change those things.
Exactly.
And they can add a lot of value or they can take away from the home. So we need to
That's
make
right.
sure we analyze that before
Yep.
we purchase the lot.
Yep, exactly. So the next factor, topography,
Yes.
which as a builder and architect firm, you're able to really have the expertise of looking at how the land is laying
Right.
and where the home is going to be placed
Right.
and
Right.
the potential future cost of trying to place, let's say, a larger home on a smaller lot, or if it has hills or water runoff.
Right. Right.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so topography is basically the shape of the property.
Okay.
It's natural shape, right? It's what God created.
Right.
Right? The valleys, the hills, the berms of dirt, the views.
Yes.
That's the topography of the property. And yes, we can change topography. That's what the engineers help us with, their grading plan. And you basically move dirt around and push dirt over here and create retaining walls. You can do a lot with the unlimited budget, but we always caution our clients on spending a lot of your budget on moving dirt.
Right. Or building retaining walls.
Right.
Which you don't really think about it, but that cost can become
Definitely.
extensive.
It can be, could be $100,000 to build massive retaining walls. And it doesn't look like you are engaging with the land.
Right.
It looks like you're imposing.
right.
And so
manipulating.
Yes,
Right.
it's a very different feeling. It looks like hardscape.
Right.
As opposed to natural scape.
Yep.
Right? Landscape.
Yep.
And so from our design philosophy of living like your own vacation and having homes that embrace the natural topography of the land,
Yep.
we assist our clients in finding land that is going to meet their design expectation and not that we're going to have this battle of we got to put all these walls here, we got to move all this dirt and excavate. And
Yeah.
so not only is this costly, but it's also, it creates a very different feel of a home.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And I remember we did have, so there was one piece of land that we looked at that was a really wonderful potential, as far as the acreage. It was like 2 acres. There was a home
Yes.
already on it.
Yes.
And it was like somewhat cleared, so that wouldn't have to be too much, moving around of dirt, but what I found was that it seemed like it was like in a gully.
Right.
That the home was not necessarily on a hill, or that there was a view of, let's say, I really enjoy being on my back porch and having my cup of coffee
Right.
in the morning and
Right.
kind of looking down over a
The
nice valley or a
Yes.
landscape,
Right.
you know? So that didn't really work for me. I wasn't super thrilled just for that reason.
Yes. So that property, first, it was off a very busy road,
Yes.
and you had kind of a blind corner.
That's right.
When you were in and out, coming into the property, and of course with your, teenage drivers.
Yeah.
We were not super thrilled about that component
Right.
to start with. But then in addition, the lot had a hill,
Yeah.
a steep slope, but it was kind of in the middle of the property where we were going to put the house.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that the house is most main level living,
Right.
it's going to have a pool and a big outdoor space. We knew that we were going to have to put some retaining walls
Right.
in order to better use that space.
Right.
And so that kind of cuts into the budget.
Right.
And so there was this whole other area below that was very open.
Yeah.
But that area, remember, it was part of the RPA, the resource protection area.
That's right.
So we really couldn't build there.
Yeah.
We had to build it in the area where the current house was.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had that big hill and with the pool and needing
And there was a
retaining wall.
neighbor right on the very opposite side
There was
of a
an-
pipe stem.
Exactly.
So it wasn't ideal.
No.
Even though the price was right and the acreage was right. So again, this is like an example of, oh, this looks good on paper.
Right.
But then when you go, you're like,
Yes.
may not actually be the best option.
Right. And we have the option of, because we know we have a schematic design for your home.
Right.
Right? So we can grab that model and put it on the property with Google Earth and
Right.
see the topography and see how it's going to sit very
Right.
quickly.
Right.
So we can do a very quick, design feasibility on the property and see it's going to work. Anything can be done.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
that, do you want to spend your budget moving dirt?
Right. Or putting a retaining wall.
Right? And
No,
that's
I'd rather have a upgraded. Yeah, exactly. I'd
I'd
rather have a pool.
Exactly. Or a sauna or a spa.
And one of the things I
Yeah.
really love about AV Architects is that you already have built many different models, even though it's custom.
Right.
That you can already have an idea of the footprint of the home that you're interested in.
Right.
But then you can still kind of customize within that scope.
Right.
But it does help to have that kind of already in motion, or knowing the amount of a footprint that you're going to need for your home
Yeah.
before you actually go buy the land.
Yeah, I think it's huge because you'd be surprised at how many people buy the land and then they realize that it won't work for the house that they want to build.
Yeah.
So of course that can be like quite frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, we do have other folks who have the land already, and then we try to maximize what we can based on
Right.
on
We
what
have to
their
work with that.
preferences are.
Of
Yeah.
course, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So yeah, the topography is really important, and understanding what money you're going to spend on potential other requirements for that home and with the land.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, the third aspect to keep in mind is trees,
right.
right?
So God's natural resources.
Right.
Yep.
And it's interesting because some people want a lot of trees and some people don't want any trees.
Right.
Right. So we've seen everything. And I think you were looking for a property that had some trees.
Right.
Because you wanted it to be more private, it to be more intimate, and
I love trees.
right, right. And so the trees are there. It's taken them hundreds of years to be established.
Yeah, and especially here in Great Falls.
Exactly.
I mean, these are historic areas too.
Right, right. I mean, that idea that we would go into a property and take down all the trees and then plant some twigs.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like such a crazy notion,
Exactly.
but it's done all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, that is not the way we approach a rebuilt on a
Right.
property.
Well, I mean, if you think about the environment and nature and doing what's right, in my mind. I mean, yes, of course, we'll have to take down some trees because the lot that I have is heavily wooded and the
Right.
house is quite small
Right.
that we're going to tear down. But remember the one property we found, it was great. 5 acres. It was like back off of a road in a neighborhood somewhat.
Yes.
Very private. Nothing had been built on it. So it was a raw piece of land.
Right.
But then when you got to the edge of it, there were so many trees and
Right.
underbrush and just stuff that you'd have to clear out away from wherever
Right. Then you
your
have to
home.
bring utilities to the site.
Yeah.
There's more excavation.
Yep.
There's tree clearing. So there's more cost associated to finding raw land
Yes,
as
exactly.
opposed to a tear down.
And specifically in this point of how much of the natural environment are you having to take away from the property?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I like the fact that, we can even take a look at tree removal in a case by case basis, because some of the trees that are older, you may want to leave, for some privacy coverage on the edge instead of, like you said, replanting a whole bunch of trees.
Right.
Or like as you're approaching the home, that it's a nice winding little road and beautiful trees and shrubs along the edges. Like those are things that, were a factor to me when I was looking at land.
Yeah, we want to be very strategic about which trees need to come down and not just go in there and plow through all the property and level it all off.
Yeah.
Right? That is really a tragedy to do that.
I mean, look, and we talked about it, right? We do want to clear some away from the home, first for safety.
Right.
Right,
Of course.
because there are a lot of storms, winds, and such that come through here. The trees are old. You don't want it to be too close to the house and then potentially have a disaster
Right.
in
Of
the
course.
future.
Of course.
And then there's the sunlight, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about, but it's good to have light, natural light, and the home exposed to natural light. So
Yes.
we will need to remove some around the home in order for that to happen.
Of course. Of
You know,
course.
and you can see the trees do provide coverage, but here in this area, especially in the summers, there's a lot of rain, humidity, and other factors that the trees will then contribute to that may not be the best for your home in the future and maintaining
Right.
it.
Right.
So that's another reason why you want to have a very strategic way of, removing some of the trees and allowing that kind of safety zone or buffer
Of
zone
course.
around your home.
Yes. So we're going to place the model on the property and then tag the trees that need to come down.
Yep.
And we're going to just strategically remove those, but not clear the whole property.
Exactly. I do know that in some counties, for instance, in the last home and property that I owned, when we were removing trees or doing any type of outdoor work, the county did stipulate to us that we'd have to replant a certain number
Yes.
on the property. So that is something also to take into account
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
because that costs money too
Right.
for the added landscaping at the end.
Right. Right. Right.
And there's nothing you can do. If the county is saying, hey, you've got to plant 100 trees on this property, like you better do it because they're going to come and count.
Right.
you know?
Right. Right. No, I mean, they're trying to protect the environment.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
makes sense. But we are trying to protect it too.
Exactly.
So we want to, build a house, but we want to be respectful to the environment.
And we can anticipate this on the onset, just
Right.
so that the new homeowner or the client can have some idea of really what the related costs are and
Right.
what is going to be the total outcome and requirement for them and the property
Right.
and their budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So going back to the lighting, as we're removing some trees and perhaps positioning the home, let's talk about another intangible with lighting.
Yes, sun orientation.
Yes.
That is a huge influencer of how the house feels. Positioning the house facing the most used areas like kitchen, dining, great room, living, main level owners. Those rooms need to be facing south, southwest, southeast,
Okay.
basically not north.
Okay.
And then the entrance and the mudroom, the garage, those spaces, those can face north, and that's fine. So when you're looking at property, you have to get your compass on your phone, and you have to be looking. You know, where's my front door going to be? The front door needs to be facing north, northeast, northwest, and then the rear part of the house, which is where we are most of the time, needs to be facing southern exposure.
Okay.
Because that's going to mean that you're going to be seeing sunrise, sunset, the sun in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That's going to bring all the sunlight.
The natural light, which I love about your architecture and design. I mean, thank you for hosting me here in your beautiful home again.
Yes.
I love all the large windows, and you can clearly see, even in this space, that, you know, the light is going to come through but not shine straight in at you.
Exactly.
Right? Like, you're really allowing for all this natural lighting to happen, and without like having it be a nuisance for you inside your home.
Right.
I mean,
right.
and it allows for, you know, I think just a happier experience, right?
Yeah, sunlight is so important. And we, you know, humans thrive on that.
That's right.
Right? And we need it.
Yep, we
And
sure
I
do.
think that it affects your mood. It affects the way people experience your home. You know, you walk into someone's home and you're like, I don't know what it is about this house, but it just feels right.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has
Or
to
that it
do.
could be the opposite. That
Yes,
it's like,
unfortunately.
I don't know, it feels closed off, or the space isn't
Right.
used the right way.
You
Like,
have to turn on all the lights during the day.
Right.
And it's because the house is backwards.
okay.
You know, it's just, and you can't change that.
Right.
So when you're looking at properties, as you're, you know, looking at approach, you're looking at topography, the next thing to look at is trees. Then the fourth point is sunlight,
Yeah.
sun orientation.
Yeah.
Make sure that your front door and the study, garage, mudroom is facing northern exposure. And then the most used spaces, you know, kitchen, great room, living,
Yeah.
main level bedroom is facing south.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even thinking about the bedrooms, right? Because we as humans, as you mentioned, are relying heavily on sunlight. I mean,
Right.
our cortisol levels, our hormones are actually dictated by the sunrise.
Right.
So when our bodies start seeing the dawn, you know, our cortisol levels naturally rise and help
Right.
us to wake up.
Right,
Right?
exactly. So you can take advantage of all these natural,
Yeah.
you know, aspects
Yep.
when you're designing the house, if you thought about them when you were looking for the land.
Yes. Yeah.
Then it's just a seamless,
Yeah.
the flow, the design just flows
Yes.
seamlessly, right?
Yeah.
You know exactly where each room needs to go based on the path of the sun.
Yeah. And I mean, this really does help with factoring the cost and the budget and building a custom home.
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
really love that. So, Francisca, now tell us, what is the last final key element that we may not be thinking of when we're looking for lots to build for our custom homes?
Sure. So the fifth intangible to look at is the shape of the lot.
Okay.
So of course, when you're looking at 2 to 5 acre lots, you know, the shape is not as important
Right.
when you're looking at lots that are under 1 acre.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Because you have more restrictions when you're looking at under 1 acre.
Right.
Right, in terms of setbacks.
Okay,
So
yeah.
setbacks is basically what the zoning regulation tells us that is the requirement that you need to build this far away from your
From
property.
the edge of the property line.
Exactly.
Got it.
So there's a rear setback, there's side setbacks, and front setbacks. And that zoning regulation depends on the area that you're building on. So obviously, the smaller the lot, the tighter the buildable area is.
Right. So your footprint has to potentially be smaller.
Right. And so what you want to make sure is that what is the shape of the lot? Like, for example, this house that we're currently, you know, shooting at is a very long house. So it's like a long rectangle, right? And so if the lot was more of a, rectangle the other
Like
direction,
narrow.
yes, then the shape wouldn't work. So if you're looking to build a house, think about when you're working, when a client is working with us, we already know the shape of the house.
Right.
Is it a long house this way? Is it a long house this way? Is it a U-shaped house with a courtyard?
Okay, yeah.
Right? Or is it an L-shaped house? Or an H? There's like 5 or 6 shapes.
Yeah.
We can talk about that when we do the next episode.
Yeah,
When
I
we
would
talk
love that.
about the concept design, we can talk about different shapes of homes, right?
Yeah.
But since you were working with us to already conceptualizing the house, we know the shape of the house.
Right.
So knowing that the shape of the house is going to be an L, when we're looking at a lot, we have to make sure that the lot is wide enough
Right.
and deep enough to accommodate the L,
Yep.
the outdoor spaces, and the approach
Right.
with the driveway
And then staying within the restrictions of,
of the setbacks.
Yep,
Right?
exactly.
And so those are things that have to be considered when you're looking at the shape of a property. Other things that affect the shape is the driveway.
Right.
Where's that located? Utilities. For example, in Great Falls, we have a lot of private utilities.
Right.
Most of the time, you have to get your own septic field. There's no public sewer.
Right.
Right? You have to get your own water.
Yep.
There's no public water. You're going to have to get your own propane tank.
Right.
There's no public gas.
Right.
So all these utilities use up space.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the shape of the lot, we have to have ideas where all these utilities are going to be,
Yeah.
because they're going to be, eating up of part of the property.
Right. And you can't build on top of a drain field or a propane tank.
No.
Right.
No, you
So,
can't. Right.
You need the space for it.
Exactly. And for the drain field, for septic, for example, the county requires that you have your drain field and then the same exact size space as a reserve.
Right.
So that's a new rule. It's been, I think, 10 years now, but you
Yep.
have to have a reserve.
Yep.
So that's a lot of area.
Yes.
So we need to talk about that. We need to know, well, where is that going to be? We have to do, obviously, a soil study. The engineer's going to tell us where they recommend it.
Right.
But then we need to figure out where we would like the house so we can,
Place the areas appropriately.
you can't let I always think this is funny when people are thinking about building, they're talking to me. I said, well, we should be talking about the design. And they're like, no, we're going to determine where the septic field is first. And I'm thinking, so you're going to let the septic field pick the best place of the
For
property
where your house is going to be built.
and then the house is going to follow?
Yeah.
It should be the other way around.
yes, exactly.
You should first decide where the house is going to be and then go figure out where the septic field is going to go.
Yep,
Right?
exactly, exactly.
Wouldn't you think that would be the right approach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I always think it's funny when people say that.
Well, I'm so thankful to have you as an expert in this process. I'm very excited about our newest adventure, building this home, my nest for my family.
Yes.
So I am just thrilled, honestly, of working with you. And I was quite surprised just of the whole process in finding this piece of land. But it really does make this whole production of building a home, it's going to be a lot more seamless moving on, instead of
Yes.
having all these different things kind of pop up and you're like, oh no, what do I do? So
Right.
no, it's great to work with the experts. And I'm so thankful for you in all of this. I'm very excited about our viewers now having access to some of this insider information.
Yes. I'm
And-
happy to share.
Yes, absolutely. Now tell me, Francisca, how can my viewers find you? Where can we find you online? Where are you located? Let us
Sure.
know.
Thank you. Yes, so our office, AV Architects Plus Builders, is in the Great Falls, Northern Virginia area, in the Village.
Yeah.
And they can visit our website, which is avarchitectsbuild.com.
Great.
Or they can call us directly to the office at 703-865-5065 and schedule a discovery call. And I will be on that call, and I'll be listening to all your visions about your home and start working with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a really amazing experience so far. So I highly recommend AV Architects and reaching out to Francisca if you or anyone you know are looking for a custom home. I am very excited also about being in this area, Great Falls in Northern Virginia, and helping anyone who would be interested in finding land for a custom build. So
Yes.
we're here as a team, working together. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming and viewing our show. And thank you again, Francisca, for being here. I am thrilled to share more with you. So keep an eye out for our future episodes on building a custom home.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess.
So thank you for joining us here on Glow Talks. I am thrilled to share all this info with you, and we have more in our series to come, so stay tuned. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify, as well as Apple Podcast. And we are very excited for getting you this content and helping you live your dreams when it comes to building a custom home.